be okay if you tell your background in brief?
Sure. So my name is Mark Gallagher. I've worked in the Formula One industry for all my life, actually, 34 years. I was on the management board of the Jordan Formula One team for 13 years. We then sold that team to a private equity company. Then I joined Red Bull, and at the time when Red Bull bought a Formula One team, set up Red Bull Racing, and then my final executive role in Formula One was running a engineering company in England called Cosworth, which is making engines for Formula One cars, but also software and electronic systems. And I was supplying about 1/3 of the Formula One teams with technology. So that's been my executive career. And these days I have a consulting business and work for a little bit of fun in Formula One with the media. I do a lot of media analysis for BBC in the UK. And then I do quite a lot of speaking to companies about lessons that they can learn from Formula One.
What's the greatest lessons you've been learning yourself in terms of the whole career, in terms of how the business around Formula One has been changing?
So the Formula One's a very dynamic environment because it is fast moving, and I don't mean about the car racing. I mean just the industry is fast moving because fundamentally a Formula One team is an engineering business. It's a technology company, and of course technology is very fast changing. I like to say that the industry has been through three technological era. The first era was 1950s and 60s. The technology was all about automotive technology, how to make wheels and brakes and suspension work in a racing environment. 1970s, 80s and 90s really was about aerodynamics and aerospace technology. So material science, what do you make the product from? So we moved from using metal to using carbon fiber, for example, and aerodynamics. So it was aerospace technologies. And really the last 20 years has been about using data and information systems to drive continuous improvement in terms of quality, reliability, also in terms of performance, also in terms of risk management, so the sport has become very data driven. So if you take those kind of automotive, aerospace and information technologies, that's what we're good at, and that's what a Formula One engineering business does. And I find all of that fascinating because the technology landscape is constantly evolving. Recent years have seen a big shift in how we engineer a product, because even as recently as 15 years ago, we would build physical prototypes and we would physically test a completed prototype before we would put it on a Formula One car. These days we use simulation technologies, and we can create a virtual product, and we can pretty well make sure that we don't waste time, effort or money building something until we already know it's actually going to work. So that kind of evolution in business processes and rapid prototyping and the way we do everything is fascinating, and the use of those kind of technologies keeps accelerating. And then I suppose in the big picture, for me, what's been so interesting in the last 15 years, maybe a little bit more than 15 years, is to work in a sport which is my industry, where we see the business model changing. And it is really frightening and very stimulating when you work in an industry where the business model breaks, and then you have to, and then you see who creates the new business models, how that is created, and then you come out the other side and you're able to look back and say, actually, that was a great journey. Okay, it was terrifying at the time, but change is all around us. So actually, to live through times of dramatic transformation is very life enhancing, and then from a business point of view, it's probably one of the most rich experiences you go through, because you realize that it's simply about moving to a new position in terms of where you can extract the value in the future, and for me that's been a particularly fascinating time.
how has the Formula circus and the business around it, what has been the key elements of changing? What was the pushing elements that started to change the whole business around it? What actually happened?
So it's always great when you're asked to explain, how did you change a business model? Because I would love to be able to say that me or some other people saw it all coming and had this great vision of how we would drive change. But as per your question, the change was pushed because Formula One is a business. To give you an idea, a top Formula One team today has a turnover of around $250 to $300 million and employs about 800 full-time staff. That's a kind of average. Interestingly, that revenue hasn't increased significantly in the last 20 years. There's been a plateauing of revenue, which I might come back to later. But essentially, that's kind of what we operate to. Now, really, in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, our business model was that we designed and manufactured an amazing Formula One car, and then we sold advertising and sponsorship marketing services. And it was a very interesting and quite simple business model, which I was, as commercial director at Jordan Formula One team, I was basically with my team selling to corporate clients. But that business model broke, and it broke because, first of all, we had corporate clients who, because of their own business cycles, would move away, were not able to do business with us. So we particularly saw that around 2000, year 2000, with some technology companies disappearing from Formula One. Then in 2002, the European Union brought in a piece of legislation. It was the European directive on advertising and sponsorship for the tobacco industry. And the tobacco industry was about 70% of Formula One's total revenue. And we had 36 months to kick the tobacco habit. And I would say that was an existential challenge to Formula One. There are lots of reasons why we were able to cope with it. One reason was, at the time, there were a lot of car manufacturers in Formula One. They were spending a lot of money, so that took up a little bit of the slack. But those car manufacturers actually then disappeared from Formula One in 2008 when the financial crisis hit. So we lost BMW, Honda, and Toyota in a 12-month period. They just exited the sport. And so those two factors, so external regulation from the European Union, over which we had no control, and then the natural business cycles of our customers. One moment you have the car companies, the next moment you don't have them. We suddenly woke up to the realization that the business model we had been operating to was just no longer sustainable. We were literally at the mercy of other people's cycles. We were at the mercy of external legislation. We were at the mercy of things over which we really had very limited control. So what we've really seen is, for Formula One as a sport, the business model has been rebuilt under the leadership of Bernie Ecclestone, who's a guy I think most people have heard of. He was chief executive of Formula One for a very long time, actually, until January this year. And what Bernie drove was a structural change in the sport in terms of repackaging it and taking it to a global market, not selling car racing to sponsors, but to sell Formula One as a global sports entertainment package, and really to go into competition against the Olympic Games and the Soccer World Cup, and get governments to become our customers. And that, if you think about it, that's a huge shift. We were effectively taking the best bits of the Olympic Games and Soccer World Cup business model, but instead of it being a four yearly event, Formula One is every 2 weeks. And we can offer that to governments on a long-term contract, which really appeals to governments, because most governments around the world want to promote their country for tourism, sport, They want to promote their nationhood, and so we really tapped into that. That was excellent. And we're talking about that was generating that kind of move to take the sport outside of Europe and start selling events around the globe, was generating kind of 500-600 million euros in fees a year from those events. So that's been the kind of approach of Formula One as a championship. What's really, I think, fascinating is what happened to the individual teams. So individual teams faced with a future where commercial sponsorship was no longer your primary source of revenue, had to find a way to make money. And the way to make money for us has turned out to be taking our expertise and our know-how inside Formula One and looking at how we can build products and services which customers want and taking them into other sectors. So you take a team like McLaren, which a very famous Formula One team, of course here in Finland, well known because Mika Häkkinen won both his world championships for McLaren. McLaren completely changed their business. They went from being a Formula One team employing 800 people to becoming a diversified technologies group. They now employ over 3,500 people. They took, first of all, their ability to design and manufacture a Formula One car and used that same know-how to build sports cars that can be sold to the public. So the McLaren automotive business grew out of the Formula One business. And that's quite a natural extension. And by the way, they're not the first ever to do it because, of course, Ferrari have always done that. So in some ways, McLaren used the inspiration of Ferrari to help them to come up with a revised business model themselves. But I think really most intriguingly for me, they took specific areas of capability, such as their understanding of how to acquire data from a Formula One car. So all our Formula One cars have got their systems monitored by onboard telemetry systems. So we receive real-time data. We gather about 80 gigabytes of information from our Formula One car over a weekend. And so we process that data, and then we bring out from that data lots of interesting learnings and insights, so we can diagnose systems performance. We can obviously spot systems degradation or failure, and actually in its ultimate form we can build up such a profound understanding of how our performance is likely to be that we can actually deploy predictive analytics. We can effectively predetermine how we're going to perform in any given event. So McLaren took this expertise in data acquisition and particularly data analytics, and have created a business called Applied Technologies, and the Applied Technologies division is working in a number of different fields, notably healthcare, because McLaren see huge opportunities in that particular domain. If you can gather data from patients, if you can take a human being and gather data from them, you can pinpoint a problem before it develops into a full-blown crisis. And whether that's monitoring patients in a hospital environment, or whether that's developing technology that means that a patient who might be in their own home, you're actually getting data from them. You can be proactive in the way you manage their condition. And this is where McLaren are going with their Applied Technologies division. So here you have a Formula One team that's now working with Birmingham Children's Hospital in the UK, developing innovative wireless networked data analytics solutions for infant care. I mean, for me, it's a phenomenal example of what can happen. But McLaren are not the only team. The Williams Formula One team has developed an advanced engineering business where they sell engineering solutions into a wide variety of customers. They've become a big consultancy to Jaguar Land Rover. They've made themselves experts in particularly the area of energy efficiency. because energy efficiency, taking a given amount of energy in a Formula One car and extracting the most performance from that amount of energy means that in Formula One, we're in the energy efficiency business. So therefore we can go into any other area where there's a given amount of energy being produced, and we can show people how to extract the maximum performance from that. And I mean, a small example from Williams is that they have done a piece of work for Sainsbury's, which is one of the UK's biggest grocery stores. And Sainsbury's problem was that in the summertime, when they're cooling all the products in their stores and refrigerating products, Sainsbury's is using about 1% of the UK's total electricity output across their 1,300 stores. So Williams went in and did a project with them to improve energy efficiency of their cooling and chilling of food products. Again, quite a strange concept to think of a Formula One team doing energy efficiency in regards, chilling food in a grocery store, but it's just an engineering challenge, and we like deploying those kinds of solutions. So that's where a lot of the action is at. We're still fundamentally involved in Formula One racing. We do still have sponsorship, but it's probably now declined to about 30% of our revenue stream. But the real action is in diversification, selling know-how, selling technology, and creating IP that you can sell into customers, and which, by the way, the customers are actually looking for. So making sure that you're adding value and driving that to a customer base.
How do you see the difference between the product planning and the business concepting, and how you actually get the new business concept out once you have the realization that, okay, we need a change? How do you actually get the change happen?
Yeah, so that it's interesting. I mean, I think if you look at for example, at what McLaren have done in terms of their dramatic diversification plan, one of the things which they did, which we have seen replicated across the sport, is the leadership of the team opened their minds to looking outside the industry and bringing in people who could explain to them where their problems were, and for McLaren to then have the opportunity to develop solutions which were meaningful. You can always go and develop a new product or service. The question is, are you developing a product or service that someone really wants? And it's so much better to get things the right way round. It's so much better to have someone sitting in front of you saying, we have a real problem doing X, Y, Z. And for you to then think, okay, so how can we, using our knowledge and maybe bringing in some additional expertise, fix those problems? So for example, you would not typically expect McLaren as a Formula One team to employ a chief medical officer. But they employ a chief medical officer because if they're going to go into healthcare, they have to understand what the healthcare issues are. And of course, when you bring in a senior healthcare manager into your business and say, okay, so we're really good at gathering and processing data. What are the problems that you guys have? And then they list all of the areas where they have challenges, and you start to marry the problem with the solution until you refine that product or service. Now, clearly what is required is a willingness to listen and learn and explore the marketplace. So you cannot prejudge your solution. You have to do a lot of listening to make that happening. And by the way, I think this is where the consultancy side is very helpful. If you can bring in experts in their field who can help you to develop a systematic approach to looking at industry trends, extrapolating forward, where the opportunities are going to lie. This is giving you such valuable bandwidth and insight, and quite frankly, enabling you to answer some of the questions that you yourself can't answer. I mean, the reality is, when we're in business, we we all know that on a day-to-day basis we are right up against our day-to-day challenges of running the business. So Formula One's learning, really, I would say, over the last 20 years is that once we have opened up our mind to what's out there in terms of where our technologies can be deployed, also where maybe other technologies could be brought into our sector. I'll give you a good example on that. So in the last 4 years, so only in the last 4 years, we've had to become experts in energy recovery systems and electric storage systems for Formula One cars. So this has led to a very fast trajectory of learning how to use lithium battery technology, how to use waste energy to how to store waste energy in the form of electricity. Now that technology for us didn't exist 7 years ago, so we've gone outside our industry to find the people and the expertise and to bring them together. But what we've been able to put in the middle of that, and the key aspect of that, is our mindset and our culture around the fact that we are simply solutions providers. We don't necessarily know all the answers, but we do have the behaviors and the culture that means that we pull together the menu which ultimately delivers the solution for us.
How do you see it from the point of view of the manager and executives when technology is changing rapidly?
Yeah.
Product development, all that is changing rapidly. It's becoming faster and faster and faster, and there's a vast amount of information coming all around you. How do you succeed as a manager or as executive in this new environment?
So one of the things that we are not short of in Formula One is people telling us how complex the world is and how complex technology is. Well, that's why we employ talented people. They're very good at managing those complex technological systems. What's much more difficult, so ironically, the real complexity is in simplifying your priorities. What is it that's actually going to make a difference in terms of the value that you're going to drive to a customer, in terms of how you're going to extract, that additional performance for your business? New product development is expensive. You want to be pretty sure that what you're putting your money into is actually going to not just give you a quick win in the marketplace, but actually lead to a long-term development for you that's going to take you to a much better place over a long period of time. So getting the prioritization right is essential. And if you think of, if I look at McLaren as a team, they determined that out of all of the complex technological capability they had, that actually the one area that they felt they had a real edge in was data analytics. And so they, instead of trying to do 40 different things to diversify the business, they actually focused on data analytics as a key area for their applied technologies division. And I mean, that division is only a few years old now and is the fastest growing unit. And they have made themselves, they're absolute experts in that field. So just prioritizing, first of all, based on what is our core ability, what can we do really well, and of course matching that with demand in the marketplace. Well, demand in the marketplace for data analytics capability was very clear. So they're simply matching to that demand. Equally in terms of if you take Red Bull's diversification, the Red Bull Formula One team, one of the things that they're very proud of is their inherent ability to rapidly prototype a solution. They can bring to market a product in a much shorter lead time than people engaged in mainstream industry. And for that reason, Red Bull Technologies business has been able to secure contracts, for example, from Aston Martin to design and manufacture the next Aston Martin road car. Now, of course, Aston Martin could do it in-house, but they'll do it in-house at much higher cost and over a much longer period of time. Red Bull Technologies can deliver it in a shorter lead time, much more efficiently, And again, they've prioritized that business. We're very, very good at rapid prototyping, and we're very, very good at short lead time manufacturing. So they've made that a core aspect of their business. So, really prioritizing where we're going and making sure that, from a management point of view, I always found making sure that your workforce understand why these are your priorities. So having very good communication around why are we doing the things that we're doing, what is the focus of the business, what's actually going to make a difference tomorrow. There should be alignment behind that. And I think, again, working in the Formula One environment, because we deal with technology, because we deal with a fair amount of complexity in our day-to-day operations, because we have, for a sports team, quite a large group of people, 800 or 900 people, it's never going to be possible for us to achieve our objectives unless we have a workforce that's completely aligned behind what we're doing. So, that leadership vision, communications, make sure we don't have people working in silos in the business, everyone having a unified approach to what we're trying to do. These are some of the critical behaviors that we have to drive, and it's one of the reasons why I say that after such a long time working in Formula One, it comes home time and again that the defining characteristic of the competitive organizations is not that they have amazing technology or finance or a big factory. It's that they have fantastic people who collaborate together and have a clear understanding of where they are going to differentiate themselves from the competition. And, so you take all that complexity, all that technological change, and you say, fine, everyone's dealing with complexity, everyone's dealing with technological change, therefore let's be smart and prioritize where we're going to go and where we're going to focus all our efforts on, and then be absolutely focused on that.
Fantastic. I think that's a great job for this. Thank you so much for this.
Good. Thank you very much.